Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Benedetto, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Queen of Raw. And before we jump into today's conversation, feel free to stop me while we're kind of going through it. Happy to take questions in real time as things may come up. Because we're talking about a big topic, end-to-end connectivity from ideation through to end of life. I mean, that's a massive value proposition. Obviously, it has amazing potential for businesses, but it is a lot to take on. And, you know, it was really exciting just recently when I'm sure we've all read that Zara came out among other brands and said that they're going to be 100% sustainable by 2025. And that is so awesome that they came out and that they said that and that people are talking about it. But it's a lot. And what does it even mean to be 100% sustainable and to be 100% connected from ideation to end of life, right? It's a big, bold challenge. Even if they don't get there, the fact that they said it is obviously showing the movement in the right direction. So end-to-end connectivity, it obviously may be the goal. But what I really hope we get out of today's conversation is, how do we start? Where do we start today? What are the simple tools and procedures we can start today to ultimately get us, whether it's by 2025, 2030, or whenever, to that end-to-end connectivity? And what are some of the tools and the technologies that exist to help us do that? So just to give you a little quick background on me, my family has been in the fashion and the textiles business for over 100 years. In 1896, my great-grandfather came over on a ship from Austria. He landed at Ellis Island, and he settled into the Lower East Side. He was an American immigrant, an immigrant chasing the American dream. So he had to make a living for his family. What did he do? He found materials and supplies nearby, old fur coats and fabrics and clothing that people had brought over on the ships with them, but that they weren't using anymore. And he would create these beautiful fashion garments by hand with minimal waste and minimal toxins, obviously because his bottom dollar depended on it. And he sold to local customers. And it was an incredibly successful business. And it made sense for people. It made sense for planet, but it absolutely made sense for his profit. Now, of course, he didn't talk about it as circular economy or sustainability, but at the end of the day, that's very much what it was. And so my vision with both my business, Queen of Raw, and with what we're going to talk about today is, how can we use technology to get back to the way my great-grandfather did business? Why? Again, because it made sense for people, planet, and profit. So here's a little description, very high level, before we jump into it in more detail about what Zara may mean when they say that they're going 100% sustainable. So Inditex came out with this value chain, and it marks, obviously, all the key steps in a supply chain and some of the sustainability initiatives that you can take at those key steps, right? So obviously it starts with fiber manufacturing. How at that stage can we use more sustainable textile fibers? Whether they are, companies like Lensing or some of the new amazing technologies that are coming out with, natural fibers and recycled fibers. How can we start right at the beginning using more sustainable textiles? And then when it comes to our actual manufacturing processes, how can we work with factories that are fair trade, that minimize water, toxins, and energy that goes into the production cycle? How do we minimize the waste that occurs there? Then, of course, logistics and distribution. How do we ship in a green, sustainable way? What about our carbon emissions? What about shipping locally to where we need things and not shipping all over the world? What about recycled packaging? All of those considerations. And then once our product actually gets to stores, how much stuff is wasted in those stores? How environmentally conscious are those stores and efficient? And then once our customers buy our products, and obviously this is a lot, but just to give you a high level, once our customers buy our products, what are they doing with it? Are they responsible with how they care for it? Does it last? Does it rip? Does it tear? How often do they have to wash it? And then at end of life, do they go recycle it? Do I do a take-back program? This is just kind of the beginning of what end-to-end connectivity and going 100% sustainable can mean. What I'm really passionate about and what we're going to talk about deeper here today is the big challenge that I see is that even with all these incredible new tools and technologies, waste is created at every single step along the way. But the good news is there are tools that we're going to talk about to solve those massive waste problems. So I'm sure people have read this. I mean, if you haven't, Ellen MacArthur Foundation is an incredible resource and platform to get information about sustainability, especially in fashion and textiles. They came out with an incredible report. Literally, by the time we say hello, businesses will have just lost $1.2 million in unsold inventory. And that is everything from your raw materials all the way to your finished goods. In fact, one garbage truck of perfectly good stuff is landfilled or burned every single second of every single day. It is so staggering, it is so massive. It's an issue I've been kind of obsessively looking at for years, but until recently, nobody was paying attention to it. But now, the world is waking up to it. In addition to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation releasing a lot of reports, we had this. I'm sure everyone remembers. H&M in 2018 had this huge report come out in the New York Times that they burned $4.3 billion in unsold inventory. And I don't put them up here because I want to use them as a scapegoat by any means. It was just an example of the first time that this happened on such a big scale that the world woke up to it, and there were conversations about it. And I spoke to this New York Times reporter to try to dive in deeper and understand what she knew, what H&M had done, and what we didn't know about this problem. You know, the good news is H&M is also, I am a big fan. They have done incredible work since around sustainability. They lead the Global Change Awards and invest massive amounts of money into sustainable innovations. They really have been at the forefront and leaders of trying to solve this problem, and I'm very proud of them for doing it. So, but I highlight this again because it was the first time we were talking about it and people realized this is massive. That $4.3 billion equated to 15% of their bottom line that year. We're not talking about pennies here. This is 15% of a business's bottom line in profit that is just eaten away, wasted, burned. It's crazy. So, you know, why did this happen? Well, it starts accumulating, right? And in the beginning, you don't realize you have this waste. So it starts accumulating, and it accumulates, and eventually it gets so massive, you don't know what to do with it. Harvard Business Review had a great report that actually did a statistic, and I should specify that this is in the United States. But for every dollar worth of unsold product, whether it's raw textiles or finished goods, you have to slap another $1.40 on top of that in yearly costs for warehousing. Everything from your warehousing facility and space to people managing it, to the depreciation in value, to insurance to cover it, to logistics to getting it there. It's a lot of money. So it wasn't even that $4.3 billion that we know H&M burned in value of the product. You got to actually more than double that every year in the amount they spent on all the warehousing costs for as long as those products lived. So it may have even been way more than that 15% of their bottom line. So this is a big problem. And the good news is the world is starting to wake up to it. Amazon was caught a few months ago destroying millions of unsold products, which it does do every year in France alone. Then it got slapped for the first time with millions of dollars in liability. France has obviously been pioneers with EPR policies and advanced changes in the laws to kind of curb this kind of behavior. So at that point, are people starting to waking up? I think so. When Amazon, you know, obviously they're a massive company, but when you're getting hit in one country for one act with millions of dollars of liability, and then this problem is pervasive and it's all over for you, it's going to start to add up. So I think that's the first time when, in addition to the H&M story coming out, when actual government is now addressing this and saying to enterprise, we're not going to stand for it any longer. So what we just talked about, the waste and the costs, isn't even the biggest problem. The biggest problem, which was just released in a big Deloitte report that just came out, is that over 65% of C-suites have no visibility beyond tier 1 suppliers and no visibility into this waste. So you know what you know, right? At the top of the triangle, and the vendors and the suppliers who you talk to regularly and who you contract with. But we know that they're subcontracting out work, right? To tier 2 and tier 3. H&M alone has 2,000 key suppliers in its chain, and they go as deep on certain products as over tier 14 suppliers. So what does that mean? Inevitably, at every step below where the dotted line is, you're not going to know what's going on in real time, and you're going to have waste sitting at all those stages, and you may not even know it. So that's really where I see a lot of this problem, and this is what end-to-end connectivity can start to address for you. In real time, understanding underneath the dotted line what is going on in your supply chain, where are the problems, how are we going to fix it all? So obviously we're all familiar with this. What is it? Well, it is an inventory management system for one of the world's biggest fashion brands who we work with. And obviously by inventory management system, I mean Excel spreadsheet. And when you're dealing with Excel spreadsheets for your inventory management system, clearly they're going to be riddled with error, and that's going to cost your business a lot of money. So this fashion brand who we work with, we went in to speak to them about their issue around waste and how we can solve it. And they said, no, we don't really have that much in liability on the books in raw materials or finished goods. We're in pretty good shape. I said, oh, really? Okay, so let me see. Well, they brought 10 different departments into the meeting. Each had their own Excel spreadsheet with pen and paper marking up notes on it, and they were all conflicting with each other. And since working with us, they realized they have well over 10x in liability what they thought they had on the books. So there were all of these costs that they had no idea they were actually costing them money. So it's a huge problem, and the biggest problem is that most people aren't even aware of it. They don't even know. And until you start looking at these issues in your own supply chain, whether you're small or large, you may not be aware you've got this problem. And you may think this end-to-end connectivity, I'm small, or I've got it all down pat, or we don't have that much financial liability on our books. But then when you dive a little bit deeper, you realize you do. And this is how big it actually is. Every single year, $120 billion with a B dollars worth of unused fabric is sitting around the world in warehouses collecting dust, or it gets burned, or sent to landfill. That's every year. And the image is a bit deceiving because you might think this is just scraps off a cutting room floor. And by the way, it is. We work with scraps off a cutting room floor. But it's also huge volumes of inventory. We're doing deals now up to 1 million yards in dead stock. Now, 1 million yards is one person's scrap, but obviously huge volume of this stuff. So just to give you a little bit of background how we get to this number, the global textiles market is, according to Marketline, over $800 billion a year market and massively growing. And we did our own reports and studies. Well over 600 billion of that is used by fashion. And for every single step of every production run for a fashion business, an estimated 15% ends up as waste. So that's how you get to that $120 billion a year number and growing. So it is massive, but it also is incredibly valuable. So that $120 billion, it's obviously destroying businesses' pockets, but we all know it's destroying our drinking water. This is a river in China running red because of contamination from textile production. And little known fact, and I'm not big on throwing a lot of scary facts out because I like to get into the solution, but I'm going to highlight just a few quickly. If we continue at the current pace of textile production, by 2025, not too long from now, over 2/3 of the entire world's population will face shortages of fresh water and be exposed to hazardous chemicals from textile production alone. We're not talking about 50 years from now. We're not even talking about 10 years from now. It's happening today. And again, this image is a bit misleading because you might think this is an Asia problem. This is not our problem. No, it is happening here on our shores. So it is an issue that we really can't wait any longer. Last statistic, and then we'll kind of dive more into the current state of play and the tools. One T-shirt, we've heard this statistic, right? A conventional T-shirt takes 700 gallons of water to produce, and another 700 gallons of water to wash it in its lifetime, and a third of a pound of chemicals. That's one T-shirt. We all have our favorite T-shirt. I wear mine now. 2 billion shirts are sold around the world every single year. And then if we replace that traditional cotton T-shirt with conventional cotton T-shirt with organic cotton, it takes only 10 gallons of water to produce and 0 chemicals. And organic cotton is also softer, thicker, lasts longer, and kind of on trend in a growing market. So why isn't everybody doing this? Why isn't everybody finding their waste, finding solutions for their waste using organic, sustainable textiles, right? Well, there are a lot of reasons, and we'll dive into a few next and then the solutions, but I want to just highlight quickly why this matters now, today, more than ever, all right? Here, all of these brands and more across industries and around the globe have signed commitments to reduce their waste by 2025 or 2030, right? Those scary years, and everybody's working on it now. But what you might not be aware of, or maybe you are, is that if they don't, they're doing it obviously because they care, they're doing it to improve their bottom line, but if they don't, they're going to be faced with exposure to significant liability with all the recent changes in the law. And this includes laws like EPR policies that I mentioned that are going on in France, but starting to take hold all over the world. We obviously have Trump, China, trade wars, imports, exports, tariffs, right? That's obviously going on right now. And then a lot of changes in the recycling laws. I'm proud to be a part of a consortium here in New York City that will be putting out a white paper in the next few months to make New York City circular. And it's in partnership with government, with enterprise. But then a big key piece of that is with startups like mine that can give you a solution to offset all that coming legal liability. Because we can't just slap businesses with all this liability and not offer them a solution. And the beauty is, which we're going to talk about now, these solutions do exist. So to get to that end-to-end connectivity, what are some of the challenges and issues that these tools need to solve? Well, these are just a few, and there are many problems and challenges to being that 100% sustainable by 2025. One is obviously your price points. You hear the word sustainability or organic textiles, and obviously you think on average it costs more, right? So I'm going to have to increase the cost of my goods, and that's outside of what my customer can pay for. That's a challenge. And keeping my inventory up to date and knowing where my waste sits and how many tiers deep I have to go to understand what's going on in my chain, that's a challenge. And obviously, even if you do identify waste, matching buyers for that waste and understanding who your consumers are, and as you go more sustainable, what's your messaging? Does that fit in with your customers and with your relationships and your brand strategy? How do you deal with shipping this stuff all over the world, right? And obviously, what sustainability certifications do I need, and what do they all mean? These are just some of the challenges around that S word, sustainability. But I think a lot of the tools that we're going to talk about now, and again, feel free to stop me with any questions because I know it's a lot, but the tools we're going to talk about now help address these issues and help give you tools and words to use, whether it's in your marketing, in your business, to both improve your bottom line and increase your top line. So, okay, obviously, and I know we've talked a lot about this, so we won't take too much time, but the models and where we are and where we're going. We were obviously at a linear economy, take, make, use, waste, great. Then we introduced recycling, which was awesome, that reduced the amount of waste, certain things that could be recycled. But the beauty of where we're going now, beyond just sustainability, is that powerful word, which I'm a big proponent of, circular economy. Because the second word in that is economy. It is an economic principle. If we start taking some of the things in our supply chain, connecting the dots, figuring out where the waste and issues are and what we need to do to recycle some things, to return some things, to reuse, to repair, then we're naturally going to have less waste, but we're naturally going to have saved money and have more resources to put back into our supply chain. It makes economic sense. So let's talk a little, and we've talked a ton about it here already, but blockchain, right? Blockchain, that B word, like S is the S word, it's like your memory. It's a powerful technology that does create a very reliable, secure, and transparent record of what's going on in your supply chain. And the beauty of it is, unlike those Excel spreadsheets or your typical database, this is all in an open, decentralized database. Everybody who touches the product can, with your permission, have access to see the information. And then every time a product changes hands, that chain in custody is recorded on the blockchain. And so, as you can imagine, we're obviously, and this is from a great company, which we'll talk about in a second, Provenance, doing work in blockchain, but we're obviously started on the left, where we have all of our different parties in our chain, and they all know what they know and have their own information, but nobody's really sharing it in real time. And now, obviously, we're moving to the right with blockchain, where everybody is connected, they know what's going on, and they know how to talk to each other. And the data is secure, can never be ripped apart, altered, erased, or changed without a record being kept of it. And that's the power of it. But we've talked a lot about blockchain, but what I want to really harp on is some of the ways that it can be a powerful benefit for you and your business, and who to go to if you're looking for a solution. One is blockchain can actually be used to verify your sustainable practices in your supply chain. So there's a company here called SourceMap that allows you to actually verify the social practices of all the different factories that you work with and understand the data around what your environmental footprint is in your very own supply chain. So that gives you both, obviously, powerful information to audit your own supply chain, but it also allows you to have the data you need to be able to articulate that story to the world, which is what so many people are not doing these days. They're doing great things, but they don't know how to talk about it or how to talk to their consumers about it to help increase their sales. Another company uses blockchain to actually allow you to collect your consumers' data. So there's a company here called Lumia, and they actually embed technology into your textiles. And the activity that your customers are having, the experience they're having with your textiles, what they're doing with it, how they're wearing it, how they're washing it, actually gets recorded on the blockchain, and you, the brand, get all that information. So now you're getting a whole host of information and data you never had before. The blockchain can also be used to help you identify counterfeit goods. Companies like Everything record the last party to get custody of a product, and then you can see where a counterfeit product must have slipped in. So that's obviously big with the counterfeit trademark, and it can be very valuable to you as a business. Two more quickly on blockchain that help with that kind of end-to-end connectivity. Companies like Provenance, who gave us this version of this slide, they actually help you tell the story to your consumers. So you'd have this supply chain story. You as the brand gets all this incredible data. But then this tells you how to share that data with your customers, how to give them that blockchain record and story so they can scan that shirt and know the entire provenance and story of where it came from, what it's made of, how sustainable it is, what to do with it at end of life. I mean, a beautiful, powerful story. And the last way blockchain, companies like mine use blockchain to identify and minimize waste. So blockchain is valuable for waste because now you've got data integrity and chain of custody information that we mentioned. So when you're dealing with waste and this dead stock, whether it's raw materials or finished goods, knowing who said what when, what it's made of, where it came from, how much it cost, what sustainability certifications are attached to that product, and where it goes to, all that information exists. And now you know in real time where in all of those different parts of your supply chain your waste is sitting, and that information can never be deleted. Yep, question.
Yes, I love everything about this traceability of blockchain.
But I have a concern about Lumia's privacy of data.
Yep.
Are we supposed to give permission?
Good question. So right now, the way blockchain works, it can be permission-based or non-permission-based. So you, as the brand or retailer, depending on the platform you're using, have the option to give controls and permissions to certain people. So maybe certain key stakeholders and parties in your chain are allowed to see the whole chain. Maybe your end customer is only allowed to see the story you shared through certain tools. You can do that. My future prediction and hope and belief is that in the future, everything's going to be on the blockchain and everything is going to be open and transparent and evident. I mean, a lot of the information I personally believe that people are concerned about hiding or keeping private, at the end of the day, we know where people, what textile suppliers you're working with. We know, people know this stuff, so why not be transparent? Get in front of it, be honest, correct issues, and work towards the same goals instead of hiding it. I think that's much more valuable. Any other kind of blockchain questions? Okay, so jump in. We just touched a little bit on this, but AI and machine learning, right? And I'm sure we're all doing some part of it in our business. Where blockchain is like your memory and recording things, I think of AI and machine learning like the reasoning part of your brain, right? Taking these actions that were previously reserved for humans and now being able to do it in computations with unbelievable amounts of data that humans couldn't possibly do, at least not yet. So the beauty of after you use, or if you choose to use some kind of a blockchain solution to help give your data and information integrity and get off those Excel spreadsheets and old databases, now as things move through a chain of custody, you can start to identify the waste and decide what to do with that waste. So in our platform, we use machine learning and AI that helps us first quantify the water, the toxins, the energy, and the dollars that are saved by people actually selling this waste or reusing the waste in their own supply chains or whatever they choose to do with it, but not letting it sit there. And it ends up having a big, significant value. You have to have that ROI calculator in any of these solutions. And then we can actually plot it month over month. And by doing some of those plottings and plotting it on maps, you can start to see behaviors and actions you may never have noticed before. For example, with some of the parties we work with and businesses we work with, they started realizing that they send a certain amount of textiles to a certain tier whatever factory, and that factory on average only ends up using a certain percent. So going forward, why not only give them less than X percent so that they don't have that overage and waste sitting there anymore, right? So you can start to make these intelligent predictions to minimize your waste streams going forward. And I think that's just kind of one example of the power of where you can start to really connect and solve problems in your chain. The last thing we'll kind of just touch on is obviously IoT. And that's a little bit, I think of it like your nervous system and sensing things. But the end of the long story short is we've got connected devices. Everybody does, right? And by having these connected devices, you can now get information about your consumer that you never had before. How many times they wear a certain things, when they wear it, where they wear it, how many times they wash it, does it rip and tear in a certain place, do they end up repairing it? And then at end of life, what do they do with it? This is so valuable for customer relationships and for your brand information. You can learn more about your product, obviously, and know, is this particular fabric always ripping? Do these people always buy this and then end up throwing it away? You're learning a lot you never knew before. But then guess what? If they do at end of life not know what to do with it, then if they're going to go throw it away, because that's the average amount of time that shirt lasts, you can send them a coupon for another shirt and do a take-back program or tell them where there is a spot that they can go recycle it. I mean, all that is incredibly valuable, and companies like Eileen Fisher have been pioneering a lot in this movement, but it's something that any business, small to large, can adopt today, and it can be incredibly valuable. So why should you care, right? Why does any of this matter? Well, we've seen in our own tests that as we talked about, you can save up to and more than 15% off your bottom line if you start to identify issues in your supply chain, identify waste, and connect the dots in ways you never did before. It also helps you increase your top line because now you've got the actionable data and numbers you need to tell a sustainable story, whether it's to your investors and stakeholders, whether it's to your C-suites, whether it's to your boss, or whether it's to your customers out there in press. And that's a powerful motivator. With tools like blockchain, you can actually catch up to or more than 98.5% of errors in real time that's going on in your chain and problems that you need to address today. And in our startup, in the past few months alone, we saved over 1 billion gallons of water, and we're just getting started. So I say that because the little actions that you take, even if it's just a small test of a small take-back program, or using our marketplace to sell some of that waste quickly and easily and make some money, it can have a dramatic impact on people and planet. And it actually doesn't have to cost you money to use some of these solutions. It can actually make you money. So if it's a win-win-win, why wouldn't you do it, right? And these are just some of the regions geographically where we've already had a massive impact around the world. So it wouldn't have been possible for us to have had this impact around the world with our marketplace and with our platform if we didn't have connectivity and if we weren't using these tools in a digital space globally. So I do mention this because never doubt, small to large, that you absolutely can go change the world. So happy to take a few questions. I will leave up my contact information. But if anyone has any questions, happy to chat more about this. I think end-to-end connectivity is an amazing goal, but I think starting with some of these tools and maybe focusing on waste and other ways that you are actually sitting on gold and can make money, but also have a sustainable story, are the obvious places to start today. And then you can still work towards that long-term vision by 2025 or whenever it is to be 100% sustainable and zero waste.
Stephanie,
Yep.
Great stuff. Very exciting. My one question, then we'll open it up to the floor, is where did the Queen of Raw come from?
So
How did that name come about?
You know, it's the first name I ever thought of, and I kind of just went with it. It was bold. It has served us well. I did grow up in Greenwich, Connecticut, and I did go to an all-women's school, and one of the things they really did empower us was to feel like we could go build a business and go change the world, and I kind of wanted to harness that both in the name of the company, but also in empowering others to feel like kings and queens of their domain and that they can also have the power to make a difference.
I thought it was a bottle of vodka.
No, maybe that too.
Any questions from the floor?
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier on,
Here comes the mic.
using non-organic cotton and so forth, the amount of water that is wasted, chemicals that are being used. And then you talked about price point, consumer price point.
Yep.
Do you not see that at some point being a trade-off? I mean, if you were using 10% less of the water that is needed, then obviously the cost of manufacturing, even if you were to go into organic, does fall into a consumer price point, right?
Well, absolutely. So I don't know, I mentioned this yesterday in the panel, but I'm a big fan and have partnered on a non-for-profit with Kering, and they released an incredible sustainability report. I mean, it's hundreds of pages deep, so it's a lot to digest, but it shows how if you adopt that value chain and at every single step, even as a luxury brand who is spending more on some textiles and some parts of their supply chain, they have saved massive amounts of money overall in their bottom line and are able to keep their price points where it needs to be. So you're right. If you're looking end-to-end connected, there are trade-offs that allow these price points to actually stay where they are. Or in cases of people working with our platform, your price points can actually drop. I mean, we have a marketplace to sell dead stock textiles, right? So you can sell these textiles, make money, turn around, and it's found money. You know, you've already taken the liability in your books, so you can go buy other sustainable materials. And the materials that people are buying on our platform, they're getting the same quality goods at a discount. So it's sustainable, but at a discount. So you actually can drop your price points if you want. And I think that's a misnomer people have in their head, and appreciate you bringing that out.
Yep, thank you.
Yep.
You mentioned about the IoT to
Yes.
manage your end of the life cycle. I'm still a little confused as
Yep.
to what are devices in your, at the fabric level, at the wound level?
Yep, I should have called it. So you're right. It could be an RFID thread that you embed, but it could be as simple as on your hang tag printing a little QR code that directs to a website. But as soon as they connect to that website and that app, they're getting valuable information. So it depends on the level of information. Obviously, with an RFID thread or with companies like Lumia that embed technology, you're getting a lot more data. But if you want to start even more simple, you can do it just with kind of QR code and start collecting information about when they're scanning, and what they're doing. And they report information in those cases. But yeah, it depends. It can be more costly or less costly depending.
Okay, let's give a nice round of
Thank
applause
you.
to Stephanie.